Today, Germany's coalition enters an existential crisis, Election Day finally arrives in the US, and a Russian plot to bomb US-bound passenger flights is exposed. From TLDR News, this is your daily briefing for Tuesday the 5th of November, 2024. After months of tanking approval ratings, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz's coalition may now be at breaking point. On Tuesday and Wednesday this week, crisis talks are being held between Scholz's centre-left Social Democratic Party, or SPD, the centre-right Free Democratic Party, FDP, and the Greens, over a budget disagreement that some say could be enough to bring down the government. For context, relations between Germany's coalition parties has taken a downturn in recent weeks, amid a worsening economic outlook that's seen the IMF predict GDP growth of just 0.8% for Germany next year. A survey by ARD last week showed that 85% of Germans are less satisfied or not at all satisfied with the current government, and a majority, 54%, are now in favour of early federal elections, ahead of the planned elections in September 2025. So, what's happened recently? Well, last week, an 18-page document was leaked containing the fiscally conservative FDP's spending plans, which laid out proposals for tax cuts, an immediate moratorium on new regulation, and scaling back of Germany's climate policies. However, because these proposals were so at odds with the visions of its two left-leaning coalition partners, Scholz was forced into kickstarting crisis talks on Sunday evening. This will all come to a head on Wednesday, when a meeting of the government's highest-ranking committee will decide whether to sign off on a common budget plan or to go their separate ways. If the parties decide to break up, this would probably either mean the collapse of the governing coalition, triggering snap elections, or the exit of the FDP from the coalition before November 14th, with the SPD and Greens continuing in a minority government. What complicates these discussions, though, is the broader context in which they're taking place. Scholz's Deputy Chancellor, Robert Habeck, has expressed concern about the timing of the dispute, saying this is the worst possible time for the government to fall, considering what's happening in Ukraine, the economic situation in Germany, and the American elections. A Trump presidency, for example, could just inspire Germany's leaders to plow on through. There's more on the way, but remember to subscribe and ring the bell for more daily briefing tomorrow. Plus, if you want to support TLDR, then check out our magazine Too Long. The link's in the description, and there'll be more details at the end of the video. Today is the day. The 2024 US presidential election is upon us. The two presidential candidates, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, have been racing across key battleground states in a final push to win over voters. Harris, the Democratic Party candidate, held her final rally on Monday in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, a state which will likely be key to either candidate's success. During that speech, she called the election the most consequential of our lifetime, and said that America was ready for a fresh start. Meanwhile, Republican nominee Donald Trump ended his campaign in Grand Rapids, Michigan, the same place he finished his 2016 and 2020 campaigns. Trump said, "This is the last one. If we get our people out, it's over. There's nothing they can do about it." While today is certainly the climax of this election cycle, with millions of voters going to the polls, the reality is that millions have already voted early. In fact, the Associated Press said that as of Monday, roughly 82 million ballots have already been cast, slightly more than half the total number of votes cast in the 2020 presidential election. Part of this can be attributed to the increase in the number of Republicans opting to vote early, as the Trump campaign has embraced and encouraged early voting, having previously shunned it in 2020. By the time you're watching this, results may already be beginning to trickle in, but it could be some time before we get a clear picture of who's in pole position. So if you're curious about the different paths Harris and Trump can take to secure the crucial 270 Electoral College votes, then why not check out our recent TLDR Global video on the two candidates' paths to victory? It's linked in the description. Next, let's turn to the war in Ukraine, where Ukrainian officials reported yesterday that their soldiers have engaged North Korean troops in combat for the first time since the latter's deployment by Russia to the western Kursk region. These North Korean forces are likely assisting Russia in its efforts to drive Ukrainian troops out of the territory that Ukraine has occupied since August. This news follows weeks of speculation on whether North Korea had sent its troops to Russia. Around 2 weeks ago, it was finally confirmed by NATO and the Pentagon that Pyongyang had sent around 12,000 troops to Russia, most of whom seem to be inexperienced, poorly trained, and underfed, including 500 officers and 3 generals. The Ukrainian foreign minister has urged Europe to recognize the severity of the situation and need for decisive action, while the US called out Russia and China at yesterday's UN Security Council for, quote, shamelessly protecting and emboldening North Korea. The White House has also said that North Koreans will become legitimate military targets if they entered the fight against Ukraine. So it seems that what was once a European conflict now has become an Asian one too. The unfolding events in Ukraine are being closely monitored by South Korea, whose neighbor and adversary is North Korea. And that's because in return for sending its troops, Pyongyang will be expecting to secure some much-needed cash, and possibly, as speculated by some Western commentators, Russian know-how on nuclear and ballistic technology. Such knowledge would dramatically intensify the threat that North Korea already poses to the south. It was also reported today that North Korea fired short-range ballistic missiles into waters off its east coast, raising further tensions in the area. Next up, a recent report by the Wall Street Journal reveals that incendiary devices found at DHL logistics hubs in Germany and the United Kingdom this July were part of a covert Russian operation intended to ignite fires aboard cargo and passenger flights bound for the United States and Canada. The devices, reportedly electric massagers filled with magnesium-based flammable material, were shipped to the UK from Lithuania. Sources suggest that the operation was a test run aimed at determining how to successfully smuggle incendiary devices onto planes heading to North America. In its connection with this investigation, Polish authorities have detained 4 individuals suspected of involvement with the parcel bombs. This action is part of an international probe launched in August, which has been coordinated with officials from several European countries. While Polish, German, and British authorities have not directly implicated Russia in the parcel bomb attempt, intelligence officials suggest that the Kremlin may have provided support to proxies tasked with carrying out the sabotage attacks. President Vladimir Putin's spokesperson has dismissed these allegations, though, as muddled misinformation. This incident isn't isolated, though, and there have been multiple Russian-linked sabotage attempts across Europe this year. The head of Germany's Foreign Intelligence Service noted last month that the Kremlin's willingness to engage in covert actions reached an unprecedented level. Similarly, the head of Britain's Domestic Intelligence Agency, MI5, stated that Russia is on a sustained mission to generate mayhem on British and European streets. And finally, today in the UK is Bonfire Night, also known as Guy Fawkes Day. The festival is celebrated on the 5th of November across the country with bonfires and fireworks to commemorate the failure of a plot to blow up Parliament way back in 1605. Now, the most famous event is the annual parade in Lewes, East Sussex, which sees a variety of huge effigies march through the streets. Previous effigies have included former UK Prime Ministers Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak, former US President Donald Trump, current President Joe Biden, confusingly with a turkey's body, and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Tonight, 6 different processions will take place in the town, with thousands of people set to attend. It's organised by a group of 7 local bonfire societies, most of which date back to the 19th century. Now, the effigies are kept top secret until the parade, though, so we'll have to wait and see which political figures make an appearance tonight. Now, we've obviously discussed today's US election earlier in the video, and if that's something you enjoyed, then you should check out Too Long, the 2024 election special. For those of you who don't know, Too Long is our physical magazine where every 4 months we dive deep into stories we care about and you should know about. The next issue is set to be published on December 1st, and will run through every major election that's happened in 2024, a year shaped by landmark elections across the globe, from the UK and US to elections in Indonesia, Bangladesh, Mexico, Rwanda, and the biggest democratic exercise in history in India. It's not just elections either. The next issue of Too Long will also discuss the first months of the new Labour administration in the UK, unpack the successes and failures of Biden's administration, ask why Europe feels so leaderless right now, the ongoing conflicts in Ukraine and Israel, and much, much more. You can pre-order your copy at toolong.news. And better still, you can also subscribe to get 25% off every copy as long as you're a member, and get every copy sent to your front door or your inbox. Plus, if you use the code 2DAILY, you'll get an additional £2 off your order, which could bring the price down as low as £5.49. The link's in the description, and thank you so much for your support.